Hello everybody, and welcome to the premiere episode of Retro Flashback, showcasing gaming's roots for a new generation. My name's Parallax Abstraction, and just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started here, this being the first episode of this series and all. If you've happened to come across this video and are wondering what this is all about, Retro Flashback is a new, what I hope will be a regular YouTube series I've started that will be taking a look at a number of different retro video games throughout history from all kinds of different platforms and eras, talking about what was good about them, or in some cases what was bad about them, and how they influenced gaming as we know it today. This is a little project I'm doing, and I'm hoping you guys are going to find it interesting. If you'd like to know more about the series in greater detail, I did record a separate video intro that's also up on the channel where I talk a little bit more in depth about what I'm doing here and why I'm doing it. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get this series underway, shall we? So we're going to kick things off with what I think is a little bit of an underappreciated gem for the Nintendo Entertainment System called Codename Viper, released in 1990 by Capcom as opposed to 1989 like it says here. And this is a rather unique action platformer, in my opinion. Action platformers back in the 80s were kind of like the first-person shooter is today. There was 1,000,001 of them, and they weren't necessarily all that different from each other. The funny thing about this game is, and I didn't know this at the time, I had this back on my NES and played it quite a bit, but I didn't realize that this game, as it turns out, is actually a pretty blatant ripoff of another title by Namco called Rolling Thunder. It's very, very similar. There's no doubt about it. The story even goes that the designer of Rolling Thunder actually had a bit of a falling out with Namco, left to go work for Capcom, and came up with this game pretty much out of spite. I don't know how true that is, but it, makes for an entertaining tale nonetheless. But I think Codename Viper is actually a superior game because it adds a few things to the formula of Rolling Thunder that I think make it a better game. But it didn't sell very well, it wasn't popular, never got a sequel, never became a franchise, so it's kind of a one-off. But I think it's something more people should see, especially if you're into the action platformer genre such as I am. Anyway, so let's get this started. As you can see, when you're ready to start the game, there are 3 difficulty modes. For the purposes of the fact that I have to talk over this thing while I play it, I'm going to pick easy, and away we go. So, like most games of this type, there's not much of a story to this. You are an agent by the name of Mr. Smith, codename Viper, who'da thunk it, and you're being sent into South America to kick the crap out of a bunch of drug cartels. Not much to it, really. There is a special what a twist moment in this story that I won't spoil for what it really matters, but yeah, that's kind of unique, but the story's pretty meaningless in this. It's just a motivation for you to go kill dudes. And we're just going to go through this. One thing I just love about this, doesn't your commander or your agent look an awful lot like Agent Grumpy Cat? I don't know. Like, just take a look at that photo. I don't know. It looks like it predicted the future. So here we go. So it's a linear progression of missions, like most games in this genre. But you're going to see here in just a minute what makes this unique. So, off we go. So, your basic premise is you have to kill a bunch of dudes, and you'll see in all these levels there's these little flip closet things. And you can see there was a hostage I just rescued. So, these closets contain a few different things. Most of them are empty. Some of them contain weapon upgrades. And some of them also contain hostages. And every hostage except for one in this game is completely optional. They are actually just for the benefit of your score. You don't have to rescue them, and the game actually throws a little twist at you, which is that while you can attack the levels at pretty much whatever speed you want, there is a timer there in the corner, but as you can see it's ticking down very slowly, and its only real purpose is for bonus. The hostages that you rescue, if you take too long, will actually die and turn to bones. Apparently there's some kind of instant skin-dissolving agent inside these little rock closets here. So you are actually encouraged to get through the levels as quickly as possible. But that's not always easy, because as you get further in the game, these levels actually get more and more complicated. See, it took too long to get to this hostage. And getting through the levels quickly and finding your way can be tricky, because while you want to get through the levels fast, at the same time, there is one particular hostage in every level that you have to rescue, which is the commando who has these special grenades. There is a wall at the end of each level that you cannot progress through without having obtained those grenades. I don't know why. I guess the wall is made of unobtainium or something, and there's special, you know, drug cartel unobtainium grenades that you need in order to do this. But this is the unique twist of this game, in my opinion, is that unlike Rolling Thunder, and frankly 99.9% of other action platformers where your goal is just to get to the end of the level and that's it, in this game, you can get to the end of the level. Oop. Crazy diver ninja guys. You can get to the end of the level, but if you don't have those special grenades, you can't progress. And the game's like, nope, gotta go back and find him. Obviously, because he's critical to progression, the commando that has the grenades can't die. He's the only hostage who can't die if you take too long to get to him. But he actually randomly spawns in a different one of the spinny closets in every mission. So every time you play this, it's a little bit different, and it would be actually kind of tricky to speedrun this game because you've got to make sure that you go through every closet door until you find him. And I think that's very unique. No game really did this, and this was kind of something that you could really only do on a home console. This game didn't exist in the arcades, though Rolling Thunder did. But obviously, because the purpose of arcades... Oh, and there's our commando, so you can see we've got the bomb there in the corner, and now we can exit the level. But the thing with Rolling Thunder, oh nuts, and other arcade games was that because arcade games were designed to suck your money, you couldn't really do something like this where you had a randomly placed pickup that you would require to leave the level, because that would just lead to frustration and people basically feeling like they've been ripped off. The problem with arcade games is that in most cases they had to be a very similar experience across the board. And in this game, they added this sort of random element into it that kept it challenging and also mixed up the variety a little bit. As I said, as you progress in this game, the levels get more and more complicated. They can even get a little bit maze-like, if you want to use that term. So it becomes interesting to try to find the commando, to get your grenades, to get out of the level, while also trying to rescue as many hostages as you can to get a good score. The only thing that sucks about this game, and this was the case with a lot of home console games in the 80s, is they went to all the trouble of designing a scoring system and a bonus mechanic centered around time and everything else, but there's no high score counter in this game. You know, it doesn't have to save your high score, but it would have been nice if they could have at least put a top score counter on the title screen so that you know what your session's most recent high score was, so that you didn't have to keep it in your head. Obviously, if you can design a scoring system, it's not particularly difficult to put in a high score counter, but they didn't do it here for some reason, which I think is a little bit of a knock, but what are you going to do? So, there's also two types of weapons in this game. As you can see, I just picked up the better one. The weapons are really the same, in that all the machine gun is a pistol that fires rapidly on its own. That's pretty much all there is to it. There is also actually unlimited ammo in this game. You do see the ammo counter ticking down, and you can just hear the tone there because I crossed 20,000 points. I just got a free life. Oh, nuts. Screwed that up. But if you happen to run out of pistol ammo, which frankly you gotta be either pretty bad at the game or standing still attempting to farm points in order to do that. But if you run out of pistol ammo, it actually will auto-regenerate one bullet ad infinitum, but the gun fires a lot slower as a result of that. Basically, the machine gun fires rapidly, and the pistol will fire as quickly as you can mash the button for the most part, whereas if you're out of ammo and you're waiting for that bullet to regenerate, it will fire a lot slower, which, because of the random pattern that the enemies take when they spawn in this game, can be to your detriment, to be sure. You can see here the enemy AI is not necessarily the most intelligent thing in the world. The enemies do have patterns, and they're, with the exception of a few level-specific guys like that, they're all generally variants on a theme. The enemies have different colors, but basically all that means is whether or not they take multiple hits to kill and whether or not they have a gun, or they're just melee guys. But they do come in randomly, so the mix of them can be kind of interesting and can definitely add some challenge. So we're about to hit the end here. I'm just habitually checking over everything as I'm wont to do. And once we get to the end here, because we've got the grenade, which as you can see, you don't lose in between lives, will get us out here. And you have a little camping session with your very tired-looking commando guy, and he will show you this. So this is at least a little piece of the, I guess you want to call it the manifesto of the drug cartels. For some reason, I guess they only distribute it in chunks. So you get a little bit more of this after each mission, which will eventually spell out their objective and lead you into the amazing twist ending, which, you know, whatever. Pretty ominous looking skull down there, though, I'll tell you what. And off we go. Yeah, I think that's good to know. Yeah, whatever, dude. I got this. And here's the bonus section with this crazy, weird aspect ratio monitor that the evil dude's watching us on, because apparently they have cameras in every one of these environments. So you get a certain amount of bonus points based on how much time you had left, and it totals up how many hostages you've rescued. As I said, the timer's only real purpose is to provide you bonus points, so it doesn't make a huge difference. But if you're going for score, that obviously helps you get through it as fast as possible. This game also does have a password system for progression, so that you don't have to start the game over every time you either choose to exit it or run out of continues. But, unlike most other games, this one will only give you a password every few levels. I actually never finished this game back in the day, but the first password the game doesn't actually give out until you've completed 3 levels. So, it still does demand some things of you. And, you know, this game it's certainly not the hardest game, but it's not easy either. But, you know, this is a theme you're going to see a lot as this show progresses and we talk about games from this era. Wow, that guy died really quick. Which is that games in this era were really, really tough. You know, in this day and age, we have games that can be 5, 10, 15, 20-hour experiences, but they didn't have, frankly, the hardware capability back in the day to make experiences that long for the most part. So, the way games worked is they were generally light on content, but they were really, really difficult. And that's how they justified the asking price. Games were actually more expensive back in the 80s than they are now. They often carried very similar price tags, except that was in money 20 years ago, 30 years ago even. So that's what they had to do, and this is, with some exceptions, I think this is an element a lot of modern games really lack. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of modern games, but with some exceptions, they're just not as hard as they used to be. They are trying to make games that have, quote, broader appeal, and they're trying to make them more accessible, which, to be honest with you, accessible is usually an industry term for dumbed down. But a lot of games weren't like that back in this day and age, because challenge was the order of the day. Oh, there's the super crate ninja enemies. Man, how'd you like to be the poor bugger who drew short straw on that duty assignment? Yeah, you gotta go sit in this box and wait for this commando guy who might show up. And you gotta be ready to pop out and shoot him, so, you know, enjoy, Bob. Ugh. Gotta suck. Ooh, there we go. And the other element that made this game particularly challenging was the fact that, as you can see there in the bottom left, I only have 2 hit points. Not unlike a lot of other action platformers of the day, including a lot of Capcom titles. You can take 2 hits, and that's it. There are also no healing elements in this game. Oh, but they do have crazy spiky ceiling balls, and because I wasn't paying attention, I just failed out. There's only 1 continue in each mission in this game, so you can see I did cross the midpoint here. And you can continue a maximum of 3 times, and you will restart at that continue point. But that's it. If you get hit twice, that's it. Your life is over. There are health power-ups you can find in later levels that will give you an additional hit point, and those will heal you. But those are few and far between, and those are the only opportunities you will have to get healed. in the game. The game is quite punishing in that regard. It does not hand out health, so you have to be very, very careful. And as you've seen a few different times there, when I've gone into the hostage closets, the enemies don't pause when you go in there. So if you're not careful and you time it wrong and an enemy happens to cross that door when you're coming out, then you're going to get hit. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to be very, very careful with your timing. But what I really liked about this game as well is that in addition to having the element of challenge that was common in the day, the fact that the hostages were randomly placed, including the one that was required in order for you to complete the level, really mixed things up a little bit, and it made it so that the game was just a little bit different every time you played it. And a lot of games in this day were very, very set. If you followed a specific pattern, and here we go, if you followed a specific pattern, you could always find your way to the end of the level. And a lot of guys you'll see doing speedruns do it based on that method. You know, the fact that a game can always be played a certain way and be beaten. But Codename Viper always demanded that you be on your toes. And we're about to finish this level, and you're going to see it throws a random fluke in there, which is the crazy firebomber dude, just to screw with you. And we're going to unlock a little bit more of the manifesto here. We must pay attention to Skull. And on we go. So that's what I think was good about this game, is that, oh, bad day for that poor bugger. But boy, you're quite satisfied with that, as it turns out. And on we go. The thing I like about this as well, as you can see, is the environments change up every level, so things become quite a bit different. And there are unique enemies placed into every level. They do tend to be a little bit of a variant of, you know, the guy who sits stationary and shoots at you, but the way in which they're deployed to you is a little bit different, and I think that's kind of cool as well. Again, adds in a little bit of a challenge element. So you can see here we've got the guys who sit stationary behind the boxes there to come after you. But yeah, I really enjoyed this game for what it did. You know, I really like action platformers, even though a lot of them are very, very samey. But this game, while sharing a lot of the elements familiar with the genre, threw in just enough different to make it interesting. And while this was not necessarily an A production from Capcom back in the day there was a lot of, I guess you could call them tiers of games. You know, you had your sort of big-time A productions that really had the crazy production values, and you had other ones that were pretty good, but maybe not quite top tier, and it went down from there. Based on my experience, I wouldn't call this one a top-tier game, but it was probably a very, very solid B game. And a lot of those B games were really, really good, which I think this one was. It is a real shame that this didn't do better. I would have liked to have seen this get a chance to evolve the idea a little bit, you know, throw some more ideas into the mix. And I played a lot of hours of this, though I never beat it back in the day. I mean, I really didn't tend to beat a lot of games back then. Most people didn't. But I really like this, and I really think that despite being a blatant ripoff, it's much better than the game it stole from. Rolling Thunder's alright, but I think this was better, and that Capcom took an idea and did more with it. It still has a lot of the Capcom hallmarks to it, like Capcom was arguably one of the best companies to make use of the very, very limited sound chip that the NES had in it. I mean, there are a lot of really good chiptunes that came out of the NES era, but Capcom, I think most would agree, did some of the best. And again, this is not necessarily their A effort, but the music in this is still really good and really, really memorable. And I mean, we're not listening to it now, but that sort of funkadelic spy music that was the main level theme for the first two levels, I just love that. And that song is stuck in my head for a very long time. There's nothing quite like it. So, and that was another little touch that Codename Viper had. And I really think it's underappreciated. I think this game did some things a little bit differently. just enough to be memorable while not necessarily being revolutionary. And that was okay. Throughout gaming, there have been a lot of derivative titles, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with taking an existing idea and doing something a little bit different with it. Not every game has to be revolutionary or super innovative, and this certainly wasn't. But what it did really well, and in a genre that was full of very, very samey games, this is one that's memorable, and I think more people should have had a chance to try. Unfortunately, if you want to try it now, your options are pretty limited. Because this was not popular, it never made it to anything like the Wii Virtual Console service. It never, as far as I know, came to any compilations, Capcom compilations, and there's a health upgrade, that made it to more modern systems. So, really, if you want to play this, pretty much your only option is to get yourself an NES and get yourself one of the cartridges. Oh god, random wall fire, guys. The good thing is that this game is, despite not being hugely popular, is also by no means rare. It's neither hard to find nor particularly expensive. So if you want to try this out, or if you're an action platformer enthusiast who'd like to add this to your collection, it will not be particularly hard to do. But if you're a fan of the genre, or just like to try out titles that, you know, do things a little bit differently, I really recommend checking Codename Viper out. I think you won't be disappointed. I liked it back then, and I think it still holds up very well even to this day. So yeah, that's Codename Viper, published and developed by Capcom in 1990 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like I said, I recommend taking a look at it. So, thank you very much for watching the premiere episode of Retro Flashback. I hope you enjoyed it. One little other piece of housekeeping: if you did like the video or think there's something I can do to improve it, I am definitely soliciting feedback. This is a new thing for me, so I'm definitely looking for feedback and definitely looking to improve. If you would like to leave a comment and can do so intelligently, please do so. Would very much like to read it, and hopefully I can improve the show for you guys going forward. Thank you very much for watching. My name has been Parallax Abstraction, and I will see you all next time.